All right, welcome back. This is week 3 of our 6-part series. We're looking today at workplace problem solving, conflict resolution, and this one topic alone is going to really change the way that you are successful at work. Week 1 we discussed on our first session mindset, and then last time, session 2, we talked about really building operational discipline, and that was professionalism. And I'm going to talk a lot about that today and how it ties in. But problem solving, conflict resolution, these are the skills that you need every day at work. Young adults struggle with these skills, and so we're going to talk all about today staying calm, thinking clearly, handling tough workplace situations before they escalate and grow out of control. And here's the beauty. The things I'm going to talk to you about today are things you can use in your daily life. You can use them no matter what interpersonal relationships, with significant other, with friends, coworkers. These are going to apply across the board. So I think this is going to be a really great lesson, and I hope you really enjoy it. I want to start off by saying that workplace problem solving, conflict resolution, these concepts, problems and disagreements happen in every workplace, in every setting. What matters is not that there is conflict, but how conflict is handled. And in every job, whether it's retail, hospitality, IT, comes with a certain set of challenges. Sometimes systems break, computers go down, the point of sale machine, you can't charge clients, customers get frustrated, coworkers misunderstand each other. Those things happen. Employer knows it. Each of your employers are going to know that. What they expect, though, of you is that you stay professional, that you problem solve, that you stay calm, that you communicate effectively. But here's the problem. They think you already know this, but you don't. Most people are not taught this. You weren't taught this in school. Your parents probably didn't teach it. If they did, they didn't model it for you. It's not their fault. It's just how reality is. Most people just don't know how to do this. And so today we're going to look at some practical ways to do this and how we're going to handle it. So I want to start off with 2 scenarios, and I want you to think through these because you're going to be confronted with situations. So I want you to start thinking right away about how you deal with this. Because most workplace conflicts often start with a simple misunderstanding. And so many workplace problems always begin with something minor, not usually a major issue. They start with small, simple things. Maybe a task wasn't finished, someone assumed something was being done by somebody else, or it was their responsibility. In fast-paced environments, in retail, in restaurants, in hospitality, people are busy and communication isn't always perfect. Learning how to handle these moments in a professional way is really going to set you apart. And so I want you to pause and think about the question on the screen. You didn't finish stocking the shelves last night. How do you handle it? Now, I want you to sit through, and maybe that's not applicable specifically to you, but think about a scenario where something didn't get finished at the end of your shift. Maybe there's a standard operating procedure that says at the end of your shift, you do these 3 or 4 things. They didn't get completed. So you're working, and the first thing that happens is your coworker comes in and they are frustrated when they see you. You didn't finish stocking the shelves, you didn't finish doing the closing procedure, whatever it was, and they're frustrated because they had to start their day doing what they say is your job. But here's the problem. Simple misunderstanding. What they did not know was, 1, you were short-staffed. Maybe you were short. People called off, and there was too many of them and not enough of you. You were helping customers the whole time, and you didn't have time to catch up on those things. The manager told you to prioritize something completely different, and because it was busy and you had all these other priorities, you could not go over your hours. So it unfortunately got left undone. Now your coworker's irritated, they're talking aloud, they're getting frustrated. So I want you to pause and think about, what is your first reaction? What do you do first? Do you say, hey, this wasn't my fault, you weren't here, you don't know, why are you blaming me? But this is really a great opportunity for you to take a deep breath, and I'm going to talk to you about a strategy in just a minute, but what would make the situation worse? And that's important, because first, understanding what is your first reaction. Secondly, what would make the situation worse? Is there something that you would say or do that would make it worse? And then probably the most important thing that we're going to talk about all today is, what would a professional response look like? And I'm going to talk to you about pausing and listening and focusing on solving problems, because those are the things that are going to set you apart. And I promise you, those are going to be also the things that are going to help de-escalate. Because think about it. When you react emotionally, the other person reacts emotionally, then you, then them, then you, then them, and it just continues to escalate and spiral out of control. Another one is if you're in IT or an IT-related role specifically, think about an opportunity when a ticket didn't get closed, you thought it did, it wasn't fixed, or something that you were tasked to do if you're not in IT was supposed to get done. You told everybody, hey, this got completed, but it didn't. Maybe you didn't follow the standard operating procedure for closing out whatever the task was, or the person said, hey, it's good, and they didn't know what they were talking about. And so now you get a mistake, and your boss is frustrated with you, and they're coming at you, right? What I want you to know is that mistakes and incomplete work are normal part of learning process. You're going to make mistakes. You're not perfect. And even if you came from another employer, how they do things is going to be different. And you may feel embarrassed or nervous or defensive. But I want you to again think about, what are your 3 reactions? Your boss is coming at you. You could yell at them back, hey, well, this worked or before, and it didn't work this time. I don't know why. They told me it worked. Or blame, shift blame. It's normal in your career early on to finish a task, complete a job, and then later realize there was a problem or it wasn't fully resolved. What matters then is how you respond. What happens in those next moments is really what tells the employer a lot about your professionalism. Don't hide the mistakes. Don't argue. We talked about that last time. Acknowledge what went wrong, what you're doing to fix it, and kind of the time frame. So those are really the most important things. So now I want to give you a 4-part framework really to solve problems. And this is not just going to be applicable at your job, but I can promise you it's going to be applicable in life. And I know this will help you. So I want you to take your time, listen through the steps that I'm going to talk about with you. And we'll go over these each individually. The first one is pause. And that's going to be huge. In every workplace situation, problems are going to happen. But what employers care about is not whether the problem occurred, but how you respond. And professionals have a structured approach for how they deal with it. And this one step in this process of the whole disagreement, problem-solving issue, if you can just do this one step and pause, it's going to de-escalate. It's going to save you so much heartache. Instead of just reacting emotionally, experienced employers use this 4-step process. And it's simply this. They pause. Then they identify the problem. Then they take action. And then they communicate. Now, why is it in that order? Imagine if number 4 was number 1. And the very first thing that you did was you got all in your feelings and you responded right away and you started going after it. I want you to think about your group, your friends, maybe family member, coworkers, and anytime there's an issue or a problem, somebody's immediately piping off. They're running their mouth, and the other members of the group are trying to calm them down, tell them to back down, stop talking, and they're escalating the problem in a big way. It happens all the time. And what then do we have a view of that person? And if it happens all the time, many times, that person doesn't want to get invited to events or functions because they're always the one that causes trouble and pipes off and runs their mouth. But if you can just follow these 4 simple steps in this framework that we're going to go over here in just a second, it's going to save you so much. It's going to help prevent misunderstandings. It's going to keep the workplace moving forward. You're going to be a solution-oriented person, and things are going to stay much calmer. So let's talk about them quickly. The first one obviously is pause. The first thing that you can do to resolve and take it easy with your emotions is to take a pause. And what that does is it allows this spike of emotion to start to come down. And I can tell you, for young professionals, this will hurt your reputation when you automatically react emotionally. Start arguing with coworkers, blaming other people, get defensive right away. Professionals pause. Even if they take a deep breath, breathe in, pause, and then let it back out. Simple breathing exercise. When something goes wrong at work, emotions can rise quickly, and you may feel that sense of embarrassment. You may be angry. You may be frustrated. You may want to be defensive, especially if someone's coming at you with frustration. Taking this moment to pause gives you time to think about what you're going to do or say before you respond, and this will prevent a lot of arguments. It'll help de-escalate the situation much more quickly. The next one is identify the problem. And that deep breath is going to help you identify the problem and what the real problem is. And it allows you to pause before you react. Understanding the real issue is necessary before you try to fix it. Otherwise, if you don't pause and respond and you just go after something, I can tell you that many, many times you're going to be going after the wrong thing. Your focused energy and attention will be focused on the wrong area. And that's going to cause more frustration and even more challenges. So I'm going to share a phrase with you in just a second, but I want you to hear this. Sometimes the problem that people argue about is not the real issue. The problem isn't the problem. Instead of focusing on blame, a professional will focus on understanding what actually went wrong. And by identifying the real problem, you can move towards a solution instead of getting stuck in conflict. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by the problem, the real problem? The problem often isn't the problem. So allow me a psychological break for a second. There is a sense that when somebody comes to you with a problem, many, many times the actual problem isn't the real problem. What do I mean by that? I mean that they come at you with this thing, this is the problem, but behind it is the actual real issue. And if you just focus on this, which is usually the emotion, you miss what the actual real problem is. And so that pause, taking a breath, taking a moment, assessing the situation, identifying what the real problem is going to help you be more effective in actually solving that problem. Because what you may not know is the problem might be someone else's problem. It may be something somebody else did. They're just looking for somebody to blame. Someone else dropped the ball down the road and they want to blame you. The problem might be that they're stressed, or they're under pressure, or they got chewed out for something that happened that they think is now your fault and they just needed to go to somebody else because they're in trouble. What you need to do is assess what exactly went wrong. And you can't do that if you're emotional, if you didn't pause. What's the real issue and what needs to be fixed? How can that be handled? So focusing on the real issue, not just focusing on defending yourself. And then after that kind of wave of emotion goes by, you've stopped, you've identified the problem, and now you're working on a solution. You can always come back later and say, hey, I didn't like the way you talked to me. I didn't like the way you came at me. I didn't like the way you pointed your finger, you said this or you did that. You can come back later and do that. But in the beginning, it's important to just pause, identify the problem, and then this one, take some action. Once the problem is clear, the next step is action taking. And this might mean troubleshooting, a system fix, looking at it and saying, oh, you know what, you're right, I made a mistake. Taking action shows initiative and responsibility, which are qualities employers are desperately needing nowadays. And what you need to ask yourself, and we'll go into this in depth in a minute, but can I fix the problem myself? Is this fixable? Do I need help? What's the next step? And then communicating that so that there's an understanding. Employers respect employees more who move towards solution. You don't just sit there and act like you don't know what's going on or that nothing's wrong, but you actually take some action. And then finally communicate. And we talked a lot about this last session. Clear communication will build trust and shows your professionalism. After you take action, it's important to communicate what's going on, letting your supervisor, letting your team, hey, this is what I found, this is what I'm doing to resolve it. Here's what's going to happen. Good communication prevents confusion, shows professionalism. Always communicate what happened and what you're doing and how you're fixing it. What is the responsibility you took in that process? Again, maybe not wasn't your fault, but you are the one who paused, identified it, and here's what's being fixed. It shows accountability, professionalism, and problem-solving ability. And I can tell you that managers don't expect you to know everything, but they expect you to communicate and show that you're taking action towards an actionable solution. So I want you to look back at all of these 4 steps: the pause, identifying the problem. I want you to look at taking action and then communicate. And I want you to pause and I want you to think for just a moment and ask yourself, based on all the things that we've talked about so far, how you handle this, how you deal with problems and situations. By communicating and doing all these things properly, you're going to build so much value in you. And most workplace problems happen because people skip one of these steps. And I'm interested in you, in a situation maybe you've been a part of. Do you see what step you missed? or what step another person missed and how it caused problems. So which step do you think most people skip, or did you? And then I want you to just think about how it impacted the situation and how, now that you know a framework for fixing that in the future, if you would have applied this 4-step framework to that situation, how might it have been different? So I want you to think about that just for a second. Now, you've identified that there's a problem. Here's the question now that you have to ask yourself. When do I solve the problem and when do I escalate it? Good employees know when to handle a problem themselves and then when to ask for help. You know, this might seem trivial, but what research is showing more and more with hiring managers and vice presidents and department heads is their biggest complaints are that young adults are not problem solving. They're just not doing it. They're waiting to be told what to do. And you remember that from week 1. It's a mindset shift from being a student to a professional. And not every problem needs to be escalated to a manager, but not every problem should be handled alone either. And that could be a problem as well. So a manager would rather you first try to fix or solve something on your own, even if it's a simple fix or two, before you escalate it. And again, there may be procedures in your organization or the ones that you're going into or are a part of that tell you exactly what to do. The goal is to solve what you can while recognizing when a problem requires additional help, that you do need some other help. And so try to solve a problem if you understand the issue. Those simple problems can often be handled independently. They don't need a bunch of other people. One of the biggest questions new employees have is this: should I try to fix it myself or should I tell somebody? If it's within the framework of your understanding and your knowledge, and the fix risk is low, meaning if you try it and you don't do it successfully, there's not going to be a lot of downside to it, and it's within your responsibility scope, then it's important for you to do that. If you understand it, it's low risk, it falls within it, then it's appropriate for you to give it a try and to do that. Employees will really thrive in an environment where your employers and others see that you're trying to fix things. So sometimes things are within your responsibility, but you shouldn't. And that brings us to the next one, escalation. And there's some pretty much flat out things, and you're probably going to have standard operating procedures at your organization. Some problems are going to require the help of others. If a problem affects customers, involves security, or safety, or keeps happening repeatedly, it should probably be escalated. Escalating a problem isn't a failure. It's a professional way of ensuring the issues get handled properly. And the biggest challenge that you may face is that you want to try to fix everything on your own, and it just makes the problem worse, or it's taking way longer when it can just be escalated and resolved. And again, it's not failure. The problem looks like it's a simple issue and you can fix it, try it. If not, if it looks way more complicated or keeps happening over and over again, then it's really important for you to then move it forward. And so just a simple framework to kind of help you understand. Now, this one you're going to deal with, and this is an issue that, quite frankly, causes a lot of people a lot of frustration, causes a lot of problems, and I would say heartache, potentially, if it's not done right. If you've ever been given feedback and it wasn't given well, it can be a little challenging and could cause some conflict and problems at work. It's a part of it. You know, problems and conflict are part of work, and so is feedback. Obviously, this is very difficult, and as with any other communication, someone has to be level-headed and calm and not allow the situation to escalate. And so when you're given this feedback, there's a posture that you should take to help you and realize that it's not an attack on you. And again, a lot of that could be in the tone and the way that it's being presented to you. But good feedback helps employees grow and develop their skill over time, especially if there was just a mistake that it was identified, you figured out a problem, and your manager is now coming to you and saying, hey, going forward, these are some things that we probably want to look at or do. That's positive. So the first thing I would encourage you to do if you're on the receiving end of feedback is this: listen fully. What does that mean? It means being present in the moment, not thinking about your response. Listen fully to what they have to say. Listen to all the things. Now, you don't have to agree with everything, but you have to listen and be focused and intent on what it is they're saying, dialed in, okay? Don't interrupt, just listen, be present, and then avoid defending yourself immediately. If you're not listening and you're thinking about a response, your immediate response after that is going to be to defend. And if you're listening fully and you're not interrupting, you're not wanting to jump in. Focus on understanding first. Because what you may realize is that you may not have all the details. They may not have all the details, but if you're not listening fully and you're just arguing, again, you're at that initial emotion phase, you're not getting anything accomplished, and it's not going to be helpful for you. One thing that you can do very easily, especially if you disagree with the feedback that you're given, is ask clarifying questions, because you can do this in a respectful way and it helps. You could say, what would you recommend next time I do differently? Or I understood the procedure to say we should do it this way, or we should look at doing that. How should it have been done? In the future, if this happens, how would you like me to handle it instead? Those are all things that you put back onto the person that's providing feedback. Allow them to give you some more direction and coaching. And I think you'll see that it'll be a much more helpful situation, because they'll see that you're receiving it, that you're coachable, that you're understanding. And the last one is to thank the person for feedback. And I know this is going to probably seem counterintuitive, but this is a very much more professional response. Thank the person for pointing out whatever it is. I appreciate the feedback. You may not have liked it. You can tell them that. It was a little hard to hear, but I thank you. I'm always about improving. I want to work improving myself. In personal relationships, you can do this too. Now, I can tell you from firsthand knowledge, the people, when you start doing this, are going to think you're going to be a little sarcastic maybe. You just have to remind them, you know what? I didn't like it. I had a conversation with someone earlier today. I didn't like it. It was difficult to hear. And I said, you know what? Thank you. And now they're at a point where they know that that really means something. And then they felt bad about the way that they were presenting it and had to ask themselves, maybe I came off a little harsh because it was a little tough to hear. Feedback done correctly is not criticism of who you are as a person. It's information about how to improve your work situation. And if you can keep that in your mind, that will help you as well. And many young employees take feedback personally. And if you can realize that it's about how to improve your work, it's all about improving the business, the organization, the department, it's only going to help you. Remember, doing this properly shows your maturity, your ability to be coached, and professionalism. And like I told you last time, professionalism usually oftentimes means promotion. So the next challenge that we're going to deal with, and really the last thing I want to talk about, is communicating under pressure. Because problems at work often happen when people are stressed. And the way you communicate in those moments can either build trust or damage your reputation. And this goes for interpersonal relationships as well. Professional communication is a skill that separates good, strong employees from just average. And you probably know this in your friend group or your personal relationships. And this is hard, very, very difficult, because we initially want to respond back right away. When somebody comes at us, it's a difficult situation. We're under a lot of pressure. We're frustrated. We immediately want to come back. And you're going to really want to work diligently on this. When systems fail, you're at work. When customers are complaining, deadlines are tight, communication becomes difficult, and staying calm and speaking clearly, focusing on solutions can really help maintain professionalism even in challenging situations. So when a problem happens at work, do the very best you can to stay calm. Take a deep breath, pause, and realize that your tone matters. When I was younger, my mom would tell me all the time, lose the tone, lose the tone. I used to think, what does that mean? Then I had a teenager, and then I understand what losing the tone meant. It was the way in which we communicated. It was the tone of voice that we had. So stay calm and watch and guard your words. Second, be clear and honest. Explain the situation. Explain what's going on. Explain the problem, the challenges, whatever it is, clearly and honestly without blaming other people. You can just say, this is what's going on, and hope that people figure it out without pointing fingers. And then next, focus on solutions. Share what you're doing to fix the problem. What oftentimes happens is we point fingers. We sit around, we gossip, we say, hey, this person dropped the ball, that person is always blowing it, we can never count on so-and-so here, this person is terrible. And we start going down this rabbit hole of all these problems and excuses and issues. But here's the deal. At the end of the day, the work still has to get done. The problem is still the problem. You're not focusing on the problem. You're focusing on what's not the problem. Get back to focusing on the solution and deal with it. Okay? Get the work done. And then keep it respectful. Professional communication builds trust and builds credibility. Now, I want you to think, if you want to pause and take a moment and go through this, I want you to think about a time when a problem at work could have been handled differently. Now, what we did so far is we've gone through a number of different steps. Problems occurred, maybe you got feedback, there was a coworker disagreement. I want you to think about how you responded then, and now how would you respond? What might you do differently using the skills that we've already talked about? Because every workplace has challenges, and the goal is not to avoid problems. The goal is to handle them professionally. And so I want you to think about a time when something like that happened. And I want you to think about what you did or how the other person handled it, and just think about the interactions in light of what we've talked about in this session. And I want you to kind of put it together and think, what would I have done if I paused before reacting? What if I would have focused on solving the problems instead of making it worse by blaming other people? What if I would have communicated better? Things like that. Because the ability to handle problems professionally is one of the fastest ways to build trust in the organization, to have you stand out in a positive way, and really get you promoted in the workplace. All right, I hope that's been a great lesson for you. I know that the tools and the resources that are available to you can help you be the best person that you can be at work. It's going to make you stand out in a way that really environments at work really need. And so I would encourage you to go back through the exercise and look at the information. If you want more detailed information, we also have career readiness links that will take you to different passages in the training where you can go more in depth with that. If you need information about that or anything we can do to be a resource for you, let us know. Drop in the comments below. Otherwise, have a great day.